because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello, good morning and welcome. Oh, I paused the wrong thing. Let's see. There we go. Good morning and welcome. We are excited to have you here today. My name is Jessica Pierce and I am honored to be your instructor today. So I need you all to do me a favor to get started. If you could take your phone, if available, and scan that QR code and do a quick check-in. Just let us know you're here. That is helpful as we pursue grant opportunities to let us know how many people we've served. And if you can't use your phone, then there's also a link in the chat. You can also just click on that. Wendy just dropped a link in, and you click on that link, and then you just let us know you're here. And so what I'd also love you to do after you fill out that check-in website is in the chat, if you could just tell us your name, let us know where you're calling from, and what industry or job that you're targeting right now. And then one thing I would love to hear from you today is what is kind of the most difficult thing you're dealing with right now? What's a job obstacle? What's something that is just difficult for you right now? Is it specifically around interviewing? Is it something within the interview process? Is it getting the interview? Is it something else, career targeting? And I would love to go ahead and address as much as that as I can during the call today. All right. Can somebody tell me in the chat, can you see my screen? I'm getting this note that my screen sharing is paused, and I just want to be sure you all can see my screen. So can somebody tell me in the chat, are we good? Are we good?
It's paused.
I've been doing that.
It's off. Okay, so let me see. Share, let me try what's going on here. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to reshare. That is odd. That's never happened.
Networking, the support.
Okay.
Now
All
we-
right. Okay, I'm going to ask you all to stay muted. Thank you. We're using the chat for our conversation today. So in the chat, can someone tell me, can you now see my screen? Are we good to go? Sorry, we got all a little weird there. Yes, thank you, Vashi. Thank you, Bridget. Great. Awesome. So again, welcome. If you have not checked in with the QR code, if you could do that. There's also a link in the chat. You can use it that way. But go ahead and check in. Make sure you let us know you're here. And thank you for those that are answering what is your most difficult job obstacle. My name is Jessica Pierce, and I am the CEO and founder of Career Connectors. We are a nonprofit organization that is based in Arizona, but we serve nationally. We've served over 75,000 people in the last 16 years that are in some type of career transition, whether that is a choice that they've made or through a layoff or some other thing that you're dealing with. Like we work with a lot of people that are going back to work, or recent college graduates, or people that have taken a career break for some reason and are going back in. So I started this organization 16 years ago in the middle of the Great Recession. And at that time, I had been laid off from a large organization, and then launched a business right away. And 2 years later, had to shut down that business because of the Great Recession. And so my husband also was dealing with layoffs, as he was laid off 3 times in 6 months. And so May of 2009, our world was rocked. Neither of us were working. It was just such a crazy moment. We just didn't really understand what was happening. At the time, our kids, we had an infant, a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old, and we're just trying to figure out how to keep a roof over our kids' heads and food on the table. And so in that moment, I decided to, as we were job searching and trying to figure out what we were going to do, I decided to help a couple people write resumes. And I called up my local church and said, can I have a room in the back of the church on Monday nights? And that is how this started 16 years ago. So I certainly wasn't in a place, I wasn't trained up to lead a nonprofit. This was not the career pathway I had chosen or was, went to school for or prepared for. I was expecting to be in corporate America my entire life. I had loved the job I had back at Intel for 10 years. And when that didn't work out, these doors were open and I stepped through them, and we now have this amazing nonprofit that's been able to do a lot of great work. And so I want to preface this conversation today by letting you know, even if right now, today, you're not where you thought you would be and doing what you thought you would be doing, I encourage you just to keep taking the steps, take the next step, because you may land somewhere where you had never imagined. And you might be in a place someday where you can say, I am grateful that I went through the layoff or I left that job or whatever it is, because I know I can tell you that. And I have met hundreds, probably thousands of others that have said the same thing. And so I just encourage you today to really dive in. We're going to talk specifically about interviewing, but I'm seeing some of your notes here, and I am going to try and touch on a lot of that as I can. Today will be my last workshop that I'm teaching under the grant that we're on with for the last year. Arizona at Work Pinal County has been sponsoring these programs, and we are so grateful to them and all the work they have done to make these happen. We have one more workshop left tomorrow that one of my colleagues will be teaching, and then we are working on trying to figure out how we can continue this work moving forward. But for now, this is the last one that I'm teaching, and so I am grateful you all are here. We're going to talk a lot about interviewing today. And so here are the main topics we're going to talk about: just the hiring process and the life cycle. We're going to talk about how you research and prepare for an interview. And then the big thing we're going to spend a lot of time on today is how you craft your answers before you even know the question. So you're going to walk into the interview with answers ready to go. And it's going to be simple. It's not a hard thing to do. And so we're going to walk through that. We're going to talk about the interview itself, what you do there, and then some things that you need to think about for post-interview afterwards. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is step into the brain of an actual hiring manager. So most of us go into the job search like, hey, let me do my resume and start sending out resumes and applications on Indeed.com or Monster or one of the job boards. And we just start sending. And what we need to actually do is take a minute, take a step back, and put our brain into the mind of like a hiring manager. If you have been a hiring manager before, if you have hired people before, can you drop in the chat a 1? Just let me know. I would like to get a pulse on how many of you have actually been a hiring manager before. Great. Thank you guys. Thanks for answering that. Good. So when you are thinking like a hiring manager, you come at this a little bit differently, because a hiring manager is looking for a couple things. They're looking for somebody that has the competence to do the job that they need, and also the ability to solve whatever problem is they're trying to solve. So the competence, they're looking for somebody that's competent in the job. And here's the thing, a lot of people, a lot of job seekers that are looking for jobs stop there. And they're like, this job description was written for me. I am totally this person. And so they stop there. They're like, okay, I'm just going to submit to these jobs. But the hiring manager, that's step 1. That's the first thing they're looking for. But they're also looking for, are you a good match from a character standpoint, behaviorally? Are you a match for our company? And do you have the chemistry? Essentially, do we like you and do you like us? Can we work well together? And all three of those components together make up a match, the culture match. So as you're out there applying and thinking about applying for jobs, you want to go through this process. Am I competent for this job? Do I have the experience and the competency? Do I have the right traits to match this company? Do I want to work there? Like, is it a good fit for me? And then, do I have the chemistry? Like, do I like them? And that, the chemistry part is big in the actual interview. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll go through the process a little bit, those three main sections, and then we're going to talk about the culture match. All right, I don't know if we're having some other tech issues. I hear someone say that I'm low volume. Is anyone else not able to hear me very well? Or are we good? Because I have everything turned up and I'm loud as it is. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. If you're not hearing me, check your volume on your computer or your phone, and you might just need to slide it up a little bit. Okay, the recruitment life cycle, you guys, every company does it a little bit different, but the reason I'm showing you this is because there are a lot of steps most of the time. Usually, you know, there are recruiters involved that are sourcing, that are going through the resumes, seeing if there's a match. The applicant tracking system is doing its thing ahead of time to see who is a match and if you have the right keywords in there. Then you have interviews, maybe screening calls. Then you have interviews with hiring managers. You might have 2, 3, 4, 5, or sometimes more, which is crazy, but sometimes that happens. You might have panel interviews, you might have one-on-one, you might have casual coffee interviews, you might have all these different types of interviews. And then they take all that information throughout all the interviews and they're comparing the candidates to see who's the best fit. And then you have an offer and you're negotiating an offer, and then finally you get to a place that's like, oh my gosh, I got an offer, I signed it, and I have a start date. And that is a lot of steps. And sometimes it feels like I am submitting my resumes, I'm submitting my applications, and no one is ever getting back to me. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to submit my resume and no one's ever going to talk to me again. It's like a waste of time. So instead of just submitting resumes, you really got to get focused. And if you were in my Job Search Essentials workshop, I think last week or the week before, I think, we talk a lot about targeting and making sure you're applying for the right jobs. If you weren't there, then you can always go back out to our webinars and take a look at that. But you really want to be focused when you're applying for jobs. And so there are a lot of steps. Let's jump into step 1 here with the competence. So competence is the ability to do the job. And the place where you and I can look and say, am I competent in this job? The place you can look is the job description. Of course, that's the main place. It's going to tell you what the responsibilities are, what the requirements are, what the commitment and the where you're working. It's going to lay out, for the most part, everything they're looking for a hire. And you want to look at that and you want to evaluate it and say, I'm about whatever percent. Yes, I'm a good fit. But if you're about 80% or more, then that's worth pursuing. If you are not 80% or more, you really have to step back and think, is this a job that I should be applying for? So all of this goes into the application process. And the reason this is important to think about is because every single time you apply for a job, you need to be doing the research, you need to be updating your resume, you need to be making connections, really focused on that job. There is no good strategy of going out to Indeed, selecting 15 jobs and submitting your resume. That is like throwing spaghetti at a wall to see if it will stick. So in our family, we have this, I don't know if any of you do this, but we have this thing my husband taught me right after we got married, when I was making spaghetti one night and I was like, oh, can you taste this and see if this is ready, if the noodles are ready? And he was like, oh no, there's another way to check that. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, you just take the spaghetti and you throw it against the wall. And I was like, what? And he goes, throw it against the wall. If it sticks, it's ready. If it doesn't, then it's not ready. And I was like, that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And so our whole family, all our kids growing up, we throw spaghetti at the wall, and we will literally sometimes have spaghetti on the wall. We had friends come over one time and they were like, why is there like noodles on your wall? Because it had gotten too high and we just hadn't gotten the ladder out yet to get it down. And so that is not a resume. That is not a strategy for finding a job. Do not throw the resumes into the portal and see if anyone responds. This is not spaghetti against the wall, okay? When you apply for a job, it is a targeted focus. You need to say, yes, this is a job I am 80% or more qualified for. Yes, this is a company I want to work for. Yes, I'm excited about the opportunity. If those are not true, then why apply for it? It's going to take mental capacity. It's going to you're going to get distracted. Like, you got to be focused on this job, and if you want this job. And so the ways that you look at this job description are based on these 3 areas. Do you have the skills and qualifications? Do you have the experience? And do you have the education and training for the job that you're applying for? So skills could be, technical capabilities. If it's a technical type job, of course, there's going to be a list of requirements. Can you do most of them? And maybe there's something on the technical requirements that you're like, oh, I don't quite know that, but I could go out and take some quick training and learn it. That is, for example, if you're a project manager and there's a project management or a database software that it says it needs you to be an expert in. Maybe you don't know that exact software, but you have worked in project management software. Then, okay, then that's fine. Check. You're going to be fine there. Do you have the skills from a leadership standpoint? What type of things are they asking? Are they asking about, did you lead people? Do you run teams? Have you been a lead or a supervisor? Are you a mentor? What kind of leadership skills do you have? And that can also be the professional skills. So sometimes they're called soft skills, but professional skills are things, I'm going to have a list in a little bit, but things like, do you have great communication skills, written and spoken? That's usually the top. People are really interested in that. Also, do you take initiative? That's another one that employers are always looking for. So looking at all the skills that are required for the job, do you have those skills? If you're about 80% or more, then you're good to go. And it's worth your time, your investment of time, to apply for that job. So next is experience. Take a look at the experience that's listed on the job description that it's desiring. Things like 5+ years of, accounting, 3+ years of, project management, or whatever skill it is that you're interested in, whatever job that you're doing. Do you have that experience, or are you close? And that's not just full-time employment. Obviously, it includes full-time employment, but it also includes any part-time, contract jobs, your volunteer experience, if you've done any internships. So thinking about volunteer experience, that absolutely counts. And I want to make sure you all hear that. That absolutely counts. Oftentimes, when you're volunteering for an organization, you will learn things, learn and put yourself out there a little bit, to really get some experience that maybe something you've been interested in, but you haven't done full force yet. We had recently somebody that helped us with putting together an online portal, and she had experience with curriculum development, but she had not done anything currently that was online portal. So she was like, I would love to do this. I have some experience, but not current software. And so what she did for us is when we developed an online curriculum, it's called Pathways actually, and we created this online curriculum for anyone to go through, from a layoff to trying to figure out what they want to do for a living, through updating a resume, LinkedIn, all the way through salary negotiation and landing a job. It's 12 modules. And she went volunteer. She went through and reviewed every one of the videos, did captions for them, went through and helped us create all the activities, downloads. It was phenomenal. And she took on this project. It was a couple months and we launched it, and it's exceptional. She was a volunteer, and as she was finishing up this project, she was introduced to somebody at a company she really wanted to work for. And when they found out that she was volunteering for me, they called me, and it's a good friend of mine now. Her hiring manager is a good friend of mine, called me to say, what do you think of this person? And I said, oh my gosh, I would hire her hands down. She's driven, initiative. She did this. She learned this. Like, I went through the whole thing. They gave her an offer 2 days later, and she wrote back to me recently. She follows up all the time, and she's like, I am in my dream job. Not even a job that I knew was out there. I am in my dream job. And I'm not saying she got that job because of me. Not at all. She got that job. She did the work. But her volunteer experience and gave her some additional credibility and gave her an amazing reference. So don't dismiss your volunteer experience. What have you done that you're like, hey, that was pretty cool that I did that? Or it can also help you think through maybe what some things that you want to do. Have you volunteered? Maybe you've led events, or you've served with different organizations, and you're like, I really loved that. I really love doing that. You can look at jobs in that area, in that space. And then, of course, internships and apprenticeships. So all of these should be on your resume, especially if they pertain to the job you're applying for. Okay, and then education. That's the last area of competence. Education is an interesting thing right now. We are seeing a trend of many companies deciding that a 4-year degree isn't as essential as it used to be. And that's interesting because when I was in high school graduating, it was almost an essential. Like, you must go to college to be successful. That has kind of changed. We are seeing a lot of companies remove that requirement or encourage people to go get some type of certification instead of a 4-year degree. Now, 4-year degrees, absolutely still important. Many people are continuing on with higher education, and should be, because there are jobs that require it and that need it. And also, there are now jobs that used to require a 4-year degree that do not. And so you think through as you're applying for these jobs, if you do not have a 4-year degree and it says 4-year degree, but you have the experience, almost every time experience trumps education. So you can still apply for the job. You can still pursue that, even if you don't have the full degree. But if you do need some training in an area, you now have the opportunity to go get it. There is so much training available online. And if the sponsor of this program is Arizona at Work Pinal County, if you are in Pinal County and if you're a resident of Pinal County, you can reach out to them. I'll have the information at the end, as well as you're going to get an email with their contact information. but they have resources if you need some training that they can give to you as an option. If you're in Arizona, in general, there are different Arizona work facilities around our state that also provide different opportunities for training and to get certifications. And if you're outside of Arizona, you would need to look it up in your area, but often there are training dollars in all states. And I'm going to type it in the chat. You would need to to find this in your state, you would need to put the word WIOA, which is a federal law, and it stands for Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act. That is a federal law, and every year the federal government sends money to the states, and each of the states decides how they're going to spend their money to help people that have been affected by job loss. And so, for example, if you do WIOA in your state, I did WIOA Ohio, then you can see where those dollars are and how you might be able to get some support. Not every state does it. Every state does it differently, but this is an example of how you can at least start to dig in. So if you do need some training, take a look at that. The other big thing that's really, really big right now is AI, and I assume many of you are already dabbling in ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or Gemini. If you're not, you need to be. I have the vice provost for the University of Phoenix sits on our board, and we're a nonprofit organization. So she sits on we have a board of directors, and she sits on our board, and I was in a meeting with her a week ago Friday. And she said to me, because they're on the front end of workforce, of trends, of hiring, because they need to make sure their training lines up. But she said, we were just running some reports and doing data analysis on what required skills are. And she said, artificial intelligence, AI, is on and is required in 80% of jobs right now. 80%. Even if it's not on the job, a component of it is going to be required as part of the job. And the easiest thing you can do to learn a little bit about it is to start using it. And so I don't have a lot on AI today, but I will, I'll talk about it a little bit when we talk about interviewing more. But if you do not have and have not used a tool like ChatGPT or another one, just go to your browser and open up a link to ChatGPT. It is as easy as using Google to search something. So in the chat, if you are using AI right now, drop in what tool you're using. The largest tool right now is ChatGPT, but there are others out there. I use about 4 or 5 different tools, and yeah, you can see Gemini, okay, ChatGPT, but choose one. And Chad, I've not heard of that one. Choose one and go after it. And I would encourage you to start with one, get used to it, and then you can start adding in other tools. But you don't need to get overwhelmed, so at least start using one if you're not. And it is going to be so helpful. So to hear that 80% of jobs are requiring the ability to use AI, that really opened my eyes even more. I already know how employers are how they're utilizing AI in many different capacities, but that's a big deal. So make sure you're using AI tools, and it can help in your job search so much as well. So that's the competence side. You want to make sure that every job you apply for, you are competent in. All right, and then we have character. Okay, Mark, you asked me, does Career Connectors provide a list of AI tools? What we have is, and I'll include it in your follow-up email, we have a tool a handbook that we created for job seekers it's called the AI Job Search Handbook. And it goes through and let's see, I think it's 10 different areas, and gives you AI recommended tools and prompts for, interviewing, for resumes, LinkedIn, etc. And so we'll make sure that gets attached to the follow-up email. But it's like a handbook that you can walk through. So any of you can utilize that and access it. And we do have a talk coming up about artificial intelligence in the next month or so, and we'll get to that at the end, and I'll talk through that. Okay, so that was competence. 80% or more, or it's not worth your time. Now, let's talk about the character match side. So this part, the character match, you want to work for a company that you want to work for. You don't want to work for a company that you don't want to work for. I know that sounds crazy, and like, what does she even mean? But why apply for a company that you have no desire to work for? Why spend your energy and time doing that when you can focus on companies that you want to work for? Because the more applications you submit, if somebody comes up to me and says, I have submitted for 100 jobs, here's what I know. They spent their time submitting, and the percentage of response is probably almost none, if any. But those of you that are focused and applying to maybe 1 or 2 jobs a day, and you're really digging in and connecting with people, interview, applying, because again, that's the spaghetti against the wall strategy. It doesn't work. But when you do the research and you only apply to companies and jobs that you want, then you're going to make some connections. Then you're going to get some interviews. And so what we're going to talk about here is, I want you to think about, I wonder, I'm getting some people with tech issues today. I don't know. I hope, if I keep freezing anyone, please let me know. And I'll try and adjust. But if you need to know, your behavior. Do some research on a website and social media. I am freezing. Okay. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to try something else here. Okay, I'm trying now. So I've gotten some notes that I'm freezing. Please let me know if it continues. I'm not really sure why. We are getting Google Chrome. They've been out in our neighborhood, and they have been installing and tearing up our roads. So I'm really excited about that. So if any of you, my voice is freezing. Oh, dang it. Okay. This is really weird because, of course, it's my last workshop and I'm freezing. Wendy, if you can keep track of if I'm freezing, can you text me and let me know? I'm just going to keep going. So from a behavior standpoint, I want you to think about what are the main things that you have strengths in that could be beneficial to a company, or what kind of things you would be interested in doing, what kind of company you would be interested in working for. So think about it this way. If you are interested in working for a company that is stable, you can expect the same thing over and over, is process oriented. If that's what you like and are comfortable with, then you want to be targeting those kind of companies, not targeting entrepreneurial startups, companies that, are going this way one day and then just take a left turn. So if you're looking for this type of company that's, stable, does the same thing, maybe you want to focus on government positions, companies that have been around a long time doing similar things, having the same kind of products. But if you're more entrepreneurial, if you're a risk taker, if you like that kind of work, then you might need to be going out and looking for a smaller or medium-sized business that is doing things differently, that's maybe does a lot of technology, that comes up with new products and does things different often. So what are your main strengths from a behavioral perspective? And how can you find a company that would appreciate those strengths in you? And one of the things you can do that we have for you is an assessment. Some of you have probably taken the DISC before. Some of you have taken some other ones. If you have taken a behavioral assessment before, can you drop in the chat what are some of the ones that you have taken? Maybe Myers-Briggs, predictive index, things like that. Culture index is one, but the DISC assessment is an option for you where you can take it and it will tell you some of your really, really great strengths. These are not an opinion. These come from data collected based on the way that you answer questions. And that's part of what I love about utilizing an assessment is so often we struggle talking about ourselves and the areas that we are really good and really strong in. But these assessments are kind of a third-party, non-biased tool that you can use to say, yeah, actually, I'm really good at this. So two of the pages I really love on the DISC assessment are ideal environment, which is a section that'll tell you where do you thrive? What kind of environment do you thrive in? For this person, they want to work with a results-oriented team. They don't want to be controlled. They do not want a micromanager. They have ideas and they want to be able to talk about them. And then you can see another page on this assessment is what value do you bring to an organization? This person is a creative problem solver. They build confidence in other people. So in a lot of other things. So this assessment is great, especially as you are trying to come up with things like, what is your greatest strength? Because that's a question we're going to get to. How do you explain what kind of work situation you want to be in? This is going to tell you your ideal environment. And so for this kind of person, they work with a results-oriented team. And they want to have a lot of people contacts. For them, it might not be ideal to work from home alone all the time. It might be ideal for them to be in a meeting with people face to face at least occasionally so that they're working around a lot of people. So think about that's going to help you identify what's important to you as far as what kind of work environment. And Cynthia, yes, you're going to get a link with this assessment on it as well. It's free and it comes from the Career Connectors website. And so we will make sure that everybody gets a link. It's careerconnectors.org/DISC is what the website is. So going over to the soft skills, again, we're talking about what are the character traits. These are some of the skills that companies are looking for right now. Some of the things that are important. Are they looking for leaders? If I'm thinking like a hiring manager, I'm hiring somebody that they're a good leader or they're a great problem solver. So I was doing a whole bunch of interviews yesterday and I'm helping a company hire somebody in the AV world. So audio, video, and lighting, AVL. And one of the top skills we need is somebody that knows how to solve problems. Because if you're in technology, whether from a networking perspective or in tech at all, you're always problem solving, trying to figure things out. And so this is a top skill that this job needs. And so we're interviewing to those type of skills to see if they're a right match for this company. So these are some of the top skills, soft skills or professional skills that are out there right now. So think through you're going to be able to look at your behavioral assessment like DISC and it will tell you what some of these are, but take a look. Here are some of the ones that are really, really strong, strongly desired from a hiring company. And there are two actually that are not on here that are making their way up the list and that we hear over and over and over again from employers. And one of them is the ability to take initiative. And so you can it's kind of woven through some of these, like responsibility and decisiveness, but the ability to take initiative, to like see a problem and go after it, is really important to employers right now. And the other one that's up and coming very quickly is the ability to analyze and understand data and information. And this is all derived from AI. And so being able to see, what goes into AI, we put information into AI, and then we get information back. And it's being able to read that, understand it, see if it's correct, see if it needs modified. So that ability to analyze data is another one that's just skyrocketing right now. So those are some of the professional skills that you're looking at. So you want to know, am I a match for the company from a competence standpoint? Am I a match for the company on a character standpoint? Like, are they the type of company that is a match for me and that I would want to work for? And then the big thing, and where the interview comes in, is chemistry. So with, again, another example of what the interview lifestyle might look like. I kind of went over it a little bit about the whole job search, but there might be multiple parts of the interview process. There might be a screening call. There might be skills testing. There might be in-person or Zoom calls. There might be, a negotiation period. All of it is part of the interview process. From the second that you're submitting your resume to the second you accept a job offer and start, all of that is part of the process. So don't think that the only part of the process is you showing up in a room having an interview. That is one of the interviews. That is not the whole thing. Oftentimes people will get declined because of the way you sent an email, or being rude to an admin that was scheduling interviews, or dismissing a recruiter. A couple months ago, I was doing interviews. So I run Career Connectors, but I also have a consulting business that I've had for 15 years. And I work a lot with churches and ministries, and I help hire ministry staff and pastors. And so I do a lot on that side. So I do a lot of interviewing. The interviewing is not on the Career Connector side, but I do it on this side of my business. And so I interview a lot of people, thousands a year. And I had this gentleman a couple months ago, as I was in the interview, I was interviewing and I'm doing the screening call, and he's like, "Oh, okay, this interview, you're just the recruiter. I'll wait to talk to the manager after we're done." And I was like, okay, just the recruiter. Know that this guy never made it to the next step. And it wasn't because he was rude to me, but it was because he was rude to me, which meant that he was likely rude to other people. And so however you respond in the whole entire interview process is part of the interview. It's not just sitting in a room and answering questions. So think about it before you send an email, before you respond quickly, think through every engagement with an employer as part of the interview. All right, so that's the interview process. So we have different types of interviews that you guys have come across. I would love to hear in the chat, what has been the hardest type of interview? Was it one of these that's listed on the screen? Was it a Zoom interview? Sometimes people talk about having an interview where they feel like they're in the spotlight and there's like 10 people in the room asking questions. Panel, that's exactly panel one. Like, you really feel like you're on the spot. I've had people tell me they've gone into interviews where there's more than one candidate in the room and they're interviewing like 3 or 4 candidates at the same time. Ah, that's horrible. I can't imagine the stress of that. Like, how do you honor the people that you're interviewing and sitting next to, and also advocate for yourself? I just think that's the worst. So yes, behavioral interviews, panel interviews, difficult. Self-recording, I thank you for saying that one. Self-recording feels weird. I agree with you, Vladimir. And I wish I wish people wouldn't do it, because it doesn't at all portray who we really are. So it does take some practice. And typically when you are asked to do a self-recording, they have queued up some questions and you have to get on video and answer those questions. And it's just awkward and it's not natural. So that is hard, and you do need to take some practice before you answer those questions, or before you send back a video of yourself. So some of the types of interviews that I'm going to talk through right here. So first of all is the screening interview. And again, this one could be with a recruiter or someone that's looking at resumes, and they're just going to ask typically about your experience, maybe some examples, and maybe why you want to do the job. So usually these are pretty quick interviews, and these are ones that you just need to explain your experience and, answer the questions. We're going to talk again about how to answer questions in a little bit, but a lot of times they're phone interviews. They might be a quick Zoom. Occasionally they might have you come in, but that's pretty rare unless they're doing a huge blitz and a whole bunch of people at the same time. So that's a screening interview. Oh, Lewis, he has a question about AI, companies using AI person to interview you. Yes, I have heard of that. And that just feels, again, really awkward to me, that you're going to be talking to essentially a person that's maybe shows up on your screen, but it is happening. The other thing that's happening on interviews that I recently realized, and that hiring managers and recruiters are queuing in on, is, listen up if you're not listening up, especially if you use AI, I want you to listen up to this. When people are interviewing on Zoom or the phone, what's happening is they have an AI tool up like ChatGPT. And as the person is asking the question, they're typing it into ChatGPT, and then they're reading the answer that comes back out of ChatGPT. Do not do that. Do not do that. They know. The other thing that is happening is if people are interviewing on a phone call or a Zoom call, but they're not opening up their camera, and somebody else is taking that interview in their place that's better at interviewing. Do not do that. Companies are figuring this stuff out, and if you sound like AI, they're eliminating you immediately. So don't do that. Instead, we're going to prepare your answers today, and you're going to do some digging to really make sure you have some answers to questions without even knowing the questions. So we have the virtual interviews, of course, and the main thing I want to tell you about this is you treat a phone interview or a Zoom interview exactly like you treat a face-to-face interview. You get dressed nicely. You make sure you have a decent background or no background, nothing back there. You make sure the kids are not running in and out of the office. Exactly like you would do in person. I cannot tell you how many times I have interviewed people and their kids are coming up to them and screaming in the background. And no, you've got to figure out a way to step out of the house, if that's the case in the situation you're in, that you need to have a babysitter come over. You need to not have your kids running around in the background. It happens so often. I feel like I need to say that, because what it's telling the employer is that you will regularly be distracted from the work that you are being hired to do. All right, then we have panel interviews, which a lot of you mentioned. So that is when multiple people are interviewing you and asking different questions. And in that case, you need to be answering questions. So when someone asks you, you need to be answering their question. but also engaging other people in the room. Do not just look at them, even though they're the one that asked the question. You do need to address them and also just kind of engage everyone in the room. It's hard, but it's important because you don't want people to zoom out to like forget about your interview. You need to really look at them and engage every person in the room. One of my favorite types of interviews are informal interviews. These are ones like, hey, can we go grab a coffee? Hey, can you meet us for lunch? Hey, can you meet us? A group of managers are meeting after work. We'd love to, meet up with you for happy hour. Those kind of things, which they do happen. And especially as you get a lot of the higher level positions will have these kind of interviews, or if you are customer facing, they will have these type of interviews. And the reason is because they want to get you out of the norm and see what you're like in front of people. And they know that based on how you are in that interview is how you're likely going to be in your normal everyday life. So when you go to these interviews, again, you are remembering this is not just a casual coffee. This is an interview. It is important to act like it. So when you are ordering lunch, I just wouldn't order anything that's super messy because you're going to be answering questions. If they invite you to happy hour, I would encourage you to not drink alcohol. Grab a soda, water, and lime. They're watching for different cues to see how you're going to engage with the customer base or how you're going to engage out in public. Be kind to all the servers, to anyone you engage with. It might seem informal, but it is the opposite. It is not an informal interview. It is part of the process. All right, and then the last thing are behavioral interviews, which we're going to jump into in just a moment, because this is where we're going to spend the majority of our time today, or for quite a while, because these behavioral interviews are the most utilized interviews. They're the ones that ask questions like, tell me about a time. Can you give me an example when you did this? Those are behavioral interviews, and most likely almost all interviews have them in some capacity. So they're the most popular. They're legally defensible because what happens is companies will take a list of behavioral interviews and ask every candidate those interviews and then rank you on your answers. And then when they all come together, the group of people that interviewed you, they all come together to compare notes, you have a score. And the people with the highest scores go on or get the job offer. So even though many people hate behavioral interviews, I saw it on the chat, these are the most asked questions are behavioral type interviews. So we're going to get there. We're going to dive into that in just a few minutes. All right. As you are getting ready to interview, what you must do, Zubair, scoring, it's different for every company. I've seen 1 to 5, I've seen 1 to 10. When I'm working with companies, I encourage them a 1 to 5 because a 1 to 10 is just too much, just like a regular survey, but it's all over the place. And there's a question about AI and cover letters. Hi, Jason. Oh, Jason, I owe you a response. I'm sorry. My daughter graduated last week, so it's been a little crazy here. You can utilize AI for cover letters. You can utilize AI for everything, as long as you edit it, as long as you humanize it, as long as you make it personal. But the copy and paste from AI and never doing anything else, not okay. So that's definitely one of the things we got to watch out for AI. Okay, so let's talk about targeting for interviews, targeting for jobs and doing the research I encourage it way before you ever even get the interview, because that's when you're applying for jobs and you know you're applying for companies you want to work for. But you have to do it when you get an interview request. And so here is a checklist for you guys. And you can screenshot this if you would like. But some of the things you want to know going into the interview. Of course, what does this company do? And what are their goals? Have they been in the news lately? What is the culture like? And then, who are you interviewing with? Those are all really important questions. So often, we go into an interview having no idea who is going to be on the other side, how many people, if it's going to be a panel interview, if it's a one-on-one. Like, we just go because we're excited. We just show up. But you want to make sure that you ask, hey, who will I be interviewing with today? I would love to prepare. And what you're going to do is you're going to connect with all of those people on LinkedIn before you even go into the interview. Because as soon as you find out who they are, you're going to jump out to LinkedIn, you're going to send them a connection request, and you're going to tell them that you're excited to interview with them on Tuesday or whenever the interview is. That is another connection point for you. And then you get to learn a little bit about them. What if, as you're preparing and doing the research, what if you all of a sudden realize they went to your same college, or they like your same sports team, or they're from your same city that you grew up in? Like, there could be connection points that you can bring up in the interview. And that goes back to the connection, the chemistry. So these are questions you must have ahead of time. So screenshot that if you haven't. Also, we are recording this. So when you get your email later today, there will be a link back to this recording that you can always reference at any time. So how do you do the research? Well, there's a couple ways. Of course, the company website. Company website is a great way to learn a lot about the company themselves, what their mission and values are. Do they have career pathways already established? How big is the company? Lots of great things can be learned on the website. And most companies will have, at the top, they'll have an About Us section where you can learn about all the products that they have or services. And oftentimes at the bottom in the footer, there will be additional information around stakeholders, boards, a whole bunch of stuff. So the homepage, looking in those areas, really important. And then definitely on the careers page. Because on the careers page, it will tell you the type of people that they hire. It will tell you maybe about their culture. They'll have videos. And I bring up this company because, one, I love this company. And if you're in Arizona, you've probably heard of Achieve. They used to be Freedom Financial Network. So when I tell you what they do first, most people are like, "Ooh, I would hate to work for that company." This is a debt collection company that has a call center. Most people are like, no way, right? Like, never want to work for a company like that. Because we have this idea of what debt collection companies are like. Because maybe some of us have been on the other side of that. I know when we were going through the recession in 2008 and 9, we were trying to short sell our home, and our bank was telling us, you must not pay your mortgage to be able to short sell your house. My husband and I, if you weren't here at the very beginning, I told a quick story, but my husband and I both lost our jobs. It was a really difficult time. But the bank was telling us, you must not pay your mortgage if you want to be able to short sell your house. So we were working through that and like, oh, this is terrible. It feels terrible, right, to not pay your mortgage and not pay a debt you owe. And at the same time, that same bank was calling us and telling us, you haven't paid your mortgage. You have to pay your mortgage. And we were like, you literally just told us, do not pay the mortgage. so that we can go into short sale. And they're like, yep, but you got to pay your mortgage. So it felt like crazy town. And we were getting these debt collection calls every single day. And so when someone says debt collection company, I have this immediate visceral like feeling. And I know Achieve. And here is the thing. They have helped save over $1 billion with a B dollars in debt for the people that they serve, their clients, their customers. And when they are hiring salespeople, people that go out and talk to customers about going through this kind of debt process, here's what they're looking for. They're looking for empathetic problem solvers. They're not looking for salespeople. They're not looking for closers. In fact, if you are a hardcore salesperson or you've done customer service or call center work, they're probably going to pass on you. And so when you find a company like this, when you go do the research, you'll see this is what they want. Because I asked more about this. I asked Achieve about this, and they said, here's the thing. When somebody is in significant debt, there is a lot of things we can do to help them get out of debt. And so what we need is a salesperson. They're not even called sales people, but that's the person talking to clients and customers. We want someone to walk alongside them and help them figure out what would be the best way to solve those problems. And we have different programs, we have different options, we have different things we can do, but they need to walk beside them and they need to make sure they feel heard and cared for. That's the type of salesperson we're looking for. So if you're applying for a sales job for Achieve, you need to update your resume and not have it about being a closer to sales. It's more about how you solve problems. So these are the type of things you need to know going into the interview about the company. Then there are other ways all over social media. So you can go into a company's LinkedIn page, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. YouTube is great because there's often tons of videos from employees about culture. And so you can learn so much about a company by going through their social feed. You can learn about where they're serving in the community. You can learn just tons of things we're doing. I actually saw a post yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yes, yesterday, because Monday was Memorial Day. Yesterday, Achieve put a post out about how they were honoring Memorial Day. And it was really interesting because they had just an individual table with a flag and some boots from a service person, and a picture of somebody that had served and had lost their life in the military. And so they took that and made somebody in their company made a post about this and honoring, what Memorial Day is all about. And I just thought that is so good because what people know about them is these are things they care about. And I know for sure they care about veterans because they also did a women's veterans event 2 weeks ago, and I got to be the keynote speaker, and it was all women veterans and people that support women veterans. And so these are the type of things you can find out as you go on to social media pages, and it is a way that you can connect with a company as you're interviewing. And then Google News. So I'm not talking about just Google. I'm talking about Google News. So if you go to Google News and you type in the name of a company, information about that company will show up without the ads, without all the extra stuff. This is just the news about what's going on with the company. So there are multiple ways that you can do your research ahead of time. And then, of course, utilizing LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the essentially #1 job site right now. And so it has a ton of users. When you apply for a job, you should immediately be on LinkedIn, looking to see if you have any connections there, looking to see if you can find a recruiter or an HR person that works there. This is part of the work that you should be doing when you're applying for jobs. That's why you should not be applying for 100 jobs a day. You should be applying for 1 or 2, because this is the type of work that it takes to get a really good job that you really, really want. And so LinkedIn is a fantastic place for research. All of those things are ways that you can plug in, do the research before you go into an interview. Think about this for a second. When you walk into an interview, you should be so ready, so excited about taking that interview that you're either nervous because you have like butterflies, and you're so excited about working there, not because you're nervous because you need a job. It's yes, you need a job, but if you're interviewing with a company that you know about and are excited about, it's a different kind of energy that's going to come off. So I want you all right now to think of a company in your brain that you would love to work for. Maybe it's one you've applied for. Maybe it's one you have on a target list. Maybe it's one you're just dreaming of and you have not applied because they don't have a job open. Or it's one you're just now thinking about, like, oh, I would really like to work for that company. Put that in your brain. A company you would love to work for. Now, drop it into the chat. Drop in who that company is. Miss Cat Honor Health. Awesome. Who else? What company would you love to work for that if they called you right now, if you were on this call, if you were on this webinar right now, and you look over at your phone and Cynthia, Allied Fire Protection shows up on your phone from a job that you applied for, are you going to be so freaking excited? Like, oh my gosh, I got to take this call. And you're going to put me, yes, you're going to put me on, you're probably just going to shut your laptop and grab the call and run out and run out into your either outside or somewhere quiet to take the call. That energy, Cynthia, and she's even putting it in the chat. That energy is what you need to be taking into every interview that you do. And so that says, this gal wants to work here. Like answering this call from, what was it, Allied Fire. Hi, this is Cynthia. And they say, this is Allied Fire Protection. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk to you. Thank you for calling me. Like the whole thing is better than random phone call. Hi, this is Jessica. And they tell you, and you're like, oh, who are you? And what's that job? Oh, okay. Yeah, I can come in for an interview. Totally different. So every job you apply for should be one that you know what job you applied for and you know the company because you've done the research. That's why you should only be applying to jobs that matter to you. All right, so now we're talking about getting into the interview. So if you do not have a piece of paper in front of you and a pen, please take a second to go do that. And I actually mean a real live piece of paper, not your phone, to take notes. Because we're going to do an activity over the next little while that is going to get you so ready for your next interview. And it's such a high value activity that you will not forget it. And you will actually continue doing it to prepare for your next interview. So a real piece of paper, a real pen or pencil. So take a second, go get that. And we're going to do a thing and we're going to write it out. And here's why. If you're sitting there today and you're listening to me, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. And it's so important for you to write some things down. So if you're just audibly listening and trying to take it all in right now, you're only going to remember between like 15 and 20% of what I say. 15 and 20%, that's what the data says. But if you are writing it down, let's say you're just putting in, you're listening. Haha, thank you, Melissa. If you are listening to me and also typing in your phone. That's two different ways that you're absorbing the information, but it's typing in your phone. You jump up to about 35% of retaining the information. And that part of that is, I don't know the exact science behind that, but just think when you're putting in your phone, oftentimes it's just like you're just typing and you're not absorbing the words that you're typing. And so when you write things down, thanks Jill, on a piece of paper or a notebook, somebody guess what is the percentage that you retain when you hear something and then you write it down on a piece of paper? What percentage do you guys think you retain? You guys are on it. 75 to 80% ish. That is retention. I can do an interview with somebody, and the way that I write the way I do interviews is I type it all out into a database so we have all the notes. I can literally do an interview with somebody and 5 minutes later totally forget what that interview was about. So I have to go back to my notes and really look at them to remember. But when I write things down, like I was at church this weekend and the sermon was fire. Oh my gosh, it was so good. When I say fire, I feel like I'm a teenager. So my girls, they're both 16, 18. I have to say fire. I have to drop in those words every once in a while to feel like young and hip. I know, I'm not. I'm 50, whatever. But the sermon was fire. And I took like 7 pages of notes. And I'm like, and I remember what it was all about. Like the retention rate is so high. So what you're going to do is you're going to write down some responses. We're going to do this activity and we're going to do it in 2 ways. And what I want you to think about is really think through right now in your brain. Don't write this down. Think through 1 or 2 things you've done in your work life that you're like, that was good. Pretty proud of that. Maybe you need to look at your resume and take a look at some accomplishments you have on there. Take a look, like, what are you proud of? What are some things that you're like, that's good? So think about that for a second. And we're going to develop one of these. We're going to develop a golden moment in your work life. And we have another process, another way to think through this, but I want you to do this one first. We're going to develop right now a golden moment in your life. And before you start, let me stop you, have you focus for just a second. I want you to develop out these stories, essentially interview answers that you can use during an interview. And here's the thing that's really important for you guys to understand. If you develop out 10 of these, 10 stories, which might seem like a lot now, but once we get going, you're going to be just fine. You develop 10 of these from your past experience, things you're really proud of. Then when you walk into an interview and they ask you a question, you're going to look down at your list of 10 stories. You're not going to bring the whole story in. You're just going to bring a couple words to remind you of the story. And you're going to look at your list and one of those answers will answer that question. Just to give you an example before you start, let's say I ask you a question such as, hey, can you tell me about a time you had to have a hard conversation with somebody at work? You know, a difficult situation, you had to have a hard conversation. And you can look down at your list, and though you don't have an exact example of like, you didn't think of this story because you were like, that was a hard person to work with. But you look down at your list and you're like, oh, this one. Oh man, when I was working at Intel, I was overseeing a huge, I had to oversee an instructor base for nationally over some corporate classes. And I was responsible for doing train the trainers, and I had to I was going on vacation for a week. So I had a colleague of mine step in to support my instructors. I had a database of about 1,000 instructors I was responsible for. And when I got back, and that was typical on our team, we supported each other. When I got back to do a debrief, I got into my email and I had a whole bunch of emails from people that they didn't know what or they had never heard about their class. Instructors hadn't shown up to their class because they weren't communicated with. And so the person that was supporting me, I had to go and have a conversation about what happened, where the miss was, and we just butted heads. It was hard. So the story of me managing 1,000 instructors, traveling nationally, and training up instructors for all these courses, that's the project. That's what I'm going to write about. But when I look down at my list and I see that story, it reminds me of, her name was Jill. I'm sorry, Jill, it wasn't you. Because I know there's a Jill on the call, but her name was Jill. And I will never forget that, especially after I write my story out. So what this is going to do, it's going to give you 10 stories that you're going to be able to share in your interviews, regardless of what the questions are. And here's the other thing, you're going to share your best stuff in the interview because you've already thought through them. It's ready to go. So here's what I want you to do on the paper, on your piece of actual paper, answer these questions and write them out. They don't have to be short form. Like, that's another thing. Write out, what was the situation? What was the event? Maybe you hosted an event. What was your job or your responsibility? Like, what was the thing that you're really proud of? You got an award? Great. Tell me about that. What was that award for? In the situation, what was your role? What did you do specifically? What did you do? And then how did you go about it? Like, when you had to meet a goal, what steps did you take? Did you have to manage a project? What software did you use? Or did you use an Excel spreadsheet or Post-it notes all over the place? Like, what are the things you did? And then what was the result? I assume if you're going to talk about a golden moment, it was a good result. Talk about what you achieved. Maybe you were under budget, or you met the timeline, or you served so many customers, or you answered so many phone calls. Maybe you changed a process. What was the result? I remember I was an admin at one point and I had to have the Christmas party. And so that was managing, I don't know, 100 and some people in our department, collecting all the money, working with the venue. Like, think event management if you managed an event and that was your thing. Write down what the result was. They were all happy. It was a team development day. They got to bring their spouses. It was just a time to connect. And I was under budget, whatever it was. Then think about, what did I learn something about myself? And do you do something differently? Did you start operating differently because of that? So take a couple minutes and write this out fully. It doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to look wonderful and nice. Just write the answers out. All right, another minute to finish up this one. All right. So now you should have on your paper at least one example of something you're really proud of. So what I want you to do later today is go through that and say it out loud. Just like let's just say the question is, what is something you're really proud of that you've done at work? Okay, it doesn't matter what the question is, but just say that's what it is. And then you can talk about this. And what most of us do when we think about something that we've done previously at work, we actually already know. We don't need a script. But what the script does, it's not a script, but what this activity does is it gets all the information down and it reminds you of, oh yeah, I did do that. And that was really cool. I did make an impact there. And we had great success. We had a great result. Because if we don't do this activity, what happens is when we answer questions, often we don't give the details, or we give too many details and we because we start rambling and we get nervous and we don't get to the result. So by writing out your example and then saying it, then you give the situation, you talk about what the event was, what you did, the result, and anything you learned from it. Like, you don't have to memorize this, and you should not. Hear me when I say this. You should not try to memorize these. What the reason of doing the activity is to remind you of this and to look at the details so that when you do get asked a question, you can just go into it and talk about it. You're not trying to answer a scripted, memorized response, or heaven forbid, typing it in ChatGPT and trying to read those words on an interview. Again, do not do that. It sounds robotic. It does not sound like you, and they know. You want to answer real responses, real examples, and you just write it out to get ready for the interviews. And so that is one way you can develop your stories. The other method, which you may have used when building out your resume, but the other method that people do and like is the STAR model. Sometimes people call it PAR. So STAR model is, think about the situation. What was the thing? What was the thing you did at work that was so cool? What was the situation? What were the tasks? Talk about the tasks that needed to be completed. Then what are the actions you took to complete those tasks? And then again, what was the result? Some people say PAR, problem, action, result, and they kind of put the S and the T together. And that's fine too, if that's the way your brain thinks. But write down on your piece of paper, maybe flip it over, write down what was the situation or the problem that you had to solve, or the great thing that you did. What was it? Write that down. Write down what were the tasks that you had to do and the actions you had to take. How did you have to plan it? What did you have to do? And then what was the result? This is another way to think about the coming up with interview responses. And this is just another way to look at it. But write down another example. So you now have at least your second one. Some of you are probably way ahead of me and have 3 or 4 by now. But write down the situation, write down the tasks, the challenge, the expectations, what needed to be done. Write down your actions. What did you do and how? And then the results. Maybe one of the things I always think about is if you've been a manager or a leader, Write down something your team accomplished and that you led them through, because you know you're going to get some leadership questions, especially if you're applying for leadership roles. If you have not led a formal team at work, maybe you have volunteered and you've led some volunteers, or an event, or you did your kids, what's that called? The PTA. Maybe you did the PTA carnival festival and you raised money and you had to lead that team of volunteers. That's really good for people that are coming back into the workforce after raising their kids. I'm always like, think through what are some of the things you've done while you're raising their kids. Some people homeschooled their kids. I'm like, whoa, now that's an undertaking, because you had to get curriculum, do the research, sit with your kids daily. There's so much to that. So think through what is another example and write it down. Hey, another minute or so to work on that. All right. So there are two ways that you can come up with these examples. My challenge to you and encouragement to you is to get 10 down. And what I would do if I were you is do it before you get an interview request. Because when we're getting ready for an interview, you need to be focused on researching more about the company, researching the people you're going to be interviewing with, and then reviewing your stories. But if you're trying to cram all this in, and what if you get a call and you're like, hey, could you interview in a couple hours? Or, hey, they just call and they're like, hey, do you have a few minutes? Like, you're already ready. So do these, get these 10 situations written down and on paper. And then after you get them written down, figured out what your stories are, what you're going to do is you're going to walk into your interview and you're going to have a piece of paper, maybe it's your notepad. You're going to bring in to the interview a list. Maybe you have 10 bullets where you just put a line to remind you of the story that you crafted, of the experience, of the achievement, of the golden moment. So, for example, that story I told you guys about earlier, I would have something like instructor manager for 1,000 instructors worldwide. That might just be, that's enough for me to remember that story and remember that experience. Maybe it's a line like managed a cross-functional team to launch a new software product. That's the line. You have the whole story written out. You know what you did and you practiced it, but that's just the line to remind you. You bring in 10 of those. Oftentimes they can be what's on your resume as well, but I notice that when somebody brings in their list, that they use these stories, and it's harder when you're looking through a resume to find your answer. So you should have a notebook, a notepad, a piece of paper to take notes when you go into an interview. And then this is absolutely acceptable to have a piece of paper with some notes on it. So that's what you're going to do. 10 stories. So let's talk interview questions. Now that you spent a little bit of time crafting a couple answers, let's talk about what are some of the interview questions. The first one here that almost all of us are going to get, no matter what, in some way, you're going to get someone that says, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your experience, or tell me a little bit about yourself. They're going to then ask some strengths and weaknesses questions. They're going to ask, why should we hire you, or why do you want this job? And then, of course, they're going to ask behavioral questions. So let's talk about the tell me about yourself. And the only reason these ones specifically I'm going over because they almost always happen. But behavioral questions, the answers you just gave can go for almost any behavioral questions in some capacity. So, but these other ones are almost always asked. So I spend a little bit of time on them. The tell me about yourself. Again, this is not a question, answer you should memorize. What they're trying to do here is to verify your resume information is correct, that you are who you say you are, and they're just getting to know you a little bit. I'm sure you guys are not surprised that many people lie on their resumes. And so this here is helping them validate what you said was true on your resume. Please don't ever lie on your resume. Please don't do that. Because if they find out, you're immediately fired in most cases. So don't lie on your resume. You want a job that you're fit for. Anyway, and so they're going to verify that. They're going to get to know you. And so what you want to do is just do a brief overview of your resume. Just talk. If you're thinking, somebody's like, Jessica, how many minutes should I be talking for each question? Do not pressure yourself that way, because now you're going into memorizing, and you do not want to memorize your answers. If you think, I can probably answer a question in like 3-ish, 4-5 minutes right in there, that's a good, time. If it's only taking you a minute to answer every question, you're either talking super fast or you're not giving enough detail. And you can, when we say mock interviews, practice with somebody, this is what we mean. Like, talk through it, have them ask you some questions and let them respond to you, or you respond to them. Let them ask you questions, you respond to them. So what the tell me about yourself is a brief overview of your resume. You were at this job and this was what you did, and then you were here and this is what you did, and the last job I was here and this is what I did. High level, what are some successes you had at those jobs? And try to relate it as much as possible to the job you're applying for. So if you're applying for an accounting job, then make sure the jobs you talk about some way support the job you're going after. They don't really necessarily care if you did a project where you ran an event for your kid's school. They don't care. They're like, we're here to talk about accounting. So you try to keep it relatable, keep it, what are your strengths, kind of the positives. And what happens a lot of times is people will be going in to tell me about yourself, when we ask the question, and people will start going, well, I don't really do this, or, that's not really my strength. We didn't even get there yet. All you're doing is giving the high level overview. Keep it positive. Keep it the strong, the good stuff. And then if you want to throw something in there personally, which is great from a connection standpoint. So one of the things people really connect well on are sports, if you're a sports person, schools, education, and hometowns. Those are 3 areas that people immediately are like, yes. So if I tell you, if you're a sports fan, if you are a college sports fan, and I tell you I am a die-hard Ohio State Buckeye. I went there, I grew up in Ohio, I'm a crazy Buckeye, and it's like hardcore. It's in my DNA. And you're like, oh my gosh, I hate Ohio State. Or maybe you're from a hometown in Ohio. If you're a sports fan, you probably have some feeling about your team. That is such a great connection point. So I was talking to this guy. He was telling me about an experience he had with an interview, and he was the interviewee. And when he got the invitation to interview with this company, he had known about them. He connected with the guy that was interviewing with him on LinkedIn. And this guy that was interviewing was a Big Ten guy. And I can't remember exactly the schools, but I'm thinking he was Purdue and the guy he was interviewing with was Indiana. So they both were like Big Ten schools. And he had been to a game or had a picture of a game that was those 2 teams playing each other. And I think it was Purdue and Indiana. And it was a Zoom interview. So he's Purdue, the guy he's interviewing with is Indiana. He had a picture of those 2 playing each other in a game. And so what he did is he went and got that picture and he put it up behind him on his Zoom. And the Purdue guy, the guy interviewing, they beat Indiana in this game. It took the guy, the interviewer, like 3 seconds to realize what was behind him. And they had this amazing conversation and connection. And even though they were opposite teams, it was like the chemistry. It was the connection point. Because the chemistry is about, do I like you? Can I work with you? And so when you can throw in a personal thing on the tell me about yourself or make a connection, you are so far ahead of everybody else because you are making a connection. People want to work with people they like and know and trust. You must be likable whether you like it or not. Most of us spend so much time with people at work that often it's more than the time we spend with our kids or our spouses. So people want to work with people they like. So how can you be relatable and how can you connect with people? All right. Great question, Mark, about the elevator pitch. Here, I personally am not a fan of the elevator pitch. I mean, I have taught the elevator pitch in the past because it was Mark's question is, he was asked to work on his elevator pitch for an interview. By the hiring director was asked you to work on this. Interesting. So tell me about yourself is kind of that, but it needs to really be focused on the room and the people you're talking to. So again, if it's tell me about yourself and you're interviewing with, I think you said IBM. IBM was earlier. You definitely want to talk about your previous time at IBM and you some of the main things you did at IBM. You may not want to talk about your most current job. Maybe it doesn't relate as much to them. And so the tell me about yourself needs to be specific to the company that you're applying for and what they're asking you to do. So that's why I don't like elevator pitches, because it's a memorized 30-second spiel about yourself. And when we're thinking like a hiring manager, it changes everything. We want to be thinking about I'm trying to get a job with this company, and this company, what do they need to know about me to know I'm the right fit? Okay, so that's the tell me about yourself. Here are a couple examples, really obviously quick examples, because I'm not going to go into 3 to 5 minutes of an answer. But this position is for an interior designer. I've been passionate about design since I was a kid. My parents remodeled their house when I was in high school, and I was able to play an active role in that. That's what made me, oh, somebody's not on mute. That's what made me want to pursue interior design as a career. And since college, I've worked at an interior design firm in Georgia, and I have been able to build my portfolio by designing both residential and commercial spaces. What I love about this one is it not only talks about what their current experience is, but it gives that connection all the way back to when they were a kid. And that tells this company, like, this is what this person wants to do. They're not here just for a job. Like, they really care about this. And so, is there something when you're applying for a job, and maybe, let's go back to Achieve. Maybe you were in debt at one time and you go into interview and they're like, tell me about yourself. And you're able to say, I am so excited about this position because I went through a really difficult time. Coming out of the recession of 2009, we were in significant trouble and we had debt collectors calling us. And I know how hard it is for people that are going through that. And as our financial future, as we reframed the way we're spending money and how to get out of debt, like, I really care about people and want to support them that way. Like, how can you connect yourself to the company? All right, so that's an example of tell me about yourself. Here's another one. Let's say it's more of an entry-level position, and this person is a hostess at a restaurant, and she's been there a couple years. And this is what she does. She greets and seats customers, fulfills orders, answers the phone. She loves working in that busy environment. And she's able to now manage a lot of things at once. And before working there, she was in retail, and she is able to, to do customer service really well. And she wants to further develop that. And she's specifically interested in this restaurant because of the reputation. And since, outside of work, I like to bake and take some mixing classes with my friends. And I really love those activities. And they also help on the professional side. So she actually went into her experience and also why she wants to work there. But also, this is kind of in her. She loves to bake and she loves to mix drinks. So it touches on all those areas. So how can you do that? And you don't need to memorize an answer, but you need to go, okay, so this is the job I'm applying for. I want to make sure I touch on these things as I'm doing the introduction. Okay, next, we're going to get what are your strengths and weaknesses, because we almost always get questions around this in some capacity. So the goal is for them is they're getting to know you a little bit more. They want to make sure you can communicate and if you're self-aware. I have asked this question so many times in one or different ways, and it's shocking to me when somebody can't come up with either a strength, or some people can't come up with a weakness. You must, every single one of us has a strength and every single one of us has a weakness. I do not care who you are. Every one of us has that. And so if you're not sure, or you want to dial it in a little bit more, take one of those assessments and it will tell you, here are the things you're really strong at. Here are the things that may be harder for you. I was talking to somebody yesterday, I had a meeting, and I was telling her that I run a networking organization. We're the second largest networking association in Arizona, and very likely the largest networking association in career networking association in the United States. And I said, here's the thing. I am terrible at networking and I hate it. And she just kind of looked at me like, okay. And I said, here's what I mean. I hate small talk. Like, when I go into a conversation with somebody and we start talking about the weather, I just like glaze over. I am terrible at it. I'm awkward. I don't know what to say. I'm like, yeah, it's Arizona, it's hot, and it's still hot. Like, I'm awkward and weird. And so I know that about myself. And so what I have learned to do is, instead of small talk, I have to have a couple questions ready to go. And I had to learn that networking is building relationships, and networking is learning and getting curious about other people. Networking is not handing out a business card and doing an elevator pitch. In fact, that sounds terrible for me because I do not like networking. But I'm really good at asking people questions about themselves. So think about, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Are you a good communicator? My husband's a counselor. He's a therapist. He is genius at small talk. Genius because he may ask somebody about the weather, and all of a sudden they are pouring their life out to him. And I'm like, how did you do that? Like, it's just his thing. People just tell him stuff. And that would never happen to me. It's not who I am. So that is like a huge strength of his. So if we go anywhere where I don't know people, like I follow on, excuse me, I follow him. Like, he starts the conversations, and then I just start to follow and ask questions to get to know people a little bit more. But I'm not good. I'm not good at that initial, how you doing? How you doing? Fine, fine. Weather. Like, no, that's not a good thing for me. You should not put me in those rooms. But I can spend time and learn stuff about people and get curious. Like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? I'm also not good at details, like not a strength. So when I do things that are detail oriented, like send our newsletter every Monday morning, I have 3 people that go through the email. One that writes a whole bunch of it, the second person that puts all the components together of all the events and stuff, and a third person that's my editor. They send it to me to review. And sometimes I add in different things, but I am not a detail person. So I had to put up things anytime I'm running projects, anything. Details, I have to have people around me. What are your things? What your weaknesses, have an answer. Have an answer to weaknesses, but also have a response of what you do about it. Like, how you get around it. So let's talk about strengths first. So here's a list of strengths on the left-hand side. Feel free to take any of those. You're like, I'm good at that. I'm good at that. I'm good at that. Feel free, or screenshot it. But think about your strength. How did you get this strength? And what have you done with it? So if somebody says, what is your strength? Don't just answer, I'm detail oriented. Explain that. In fact, you can look down at your list of 10 and use one of those examples. If you're detail oriented and one of your examples is about an event you ran, talk about that. Say, I am detail oriented. I'm so detail oriented that when I ran this event, I was running it for 150 people. We had vendors, we had customers, it was a fundraiser. I was managing all the parts. I used Microsoft Project to assign, like, go into the example. Don't just give detail oriented. And I can't tell you how many times somebody has had detail oriented on their resume and spelled words wrong, like manger instead of manager. It's a big one. Go look at your resume and make sure it doesn't have manger, because it happens all the time, because Word does not catch that one. But like, make sure that whatever you're telling them, you can validate. All right. And same with weaknesses. Please don't ever say, you know what? I can't really think of any weaknesses. What that tells the company is you are not self-aware, that you don't know yourself. So think through what are some of the things that I'm not great at? Maybe you're not great at speaking in front of a whole bunch of people. Maybe you tend to get emotional sometimes when someone's going through a hard time. I had a work call yesterday and I cried on the phone with this gal that has been volunteering with me for the last 6 months because she's going through a really hard time. In that case, that was not necessarily weakness because it was a certain situation. But there was a period of time when I cried a lot because I was just going through a hard time personally. And so I was like, okay, in this season of my life, this is something I need to know about. And if I have to have a hard conversation with somebody, it has to be first thing in the morning, has to be before I've dealt with anything hard. And that meeting's going to happen at 8 a.m. because then I might have to step away for a while to recoup myself. It was just so I knew that about that season. That's not my normal. I knew that about my season of life I was in. Yesterday, when I cried with her on the phone, that's not a weakness, but it was for a while because I was doing it all the time and I was having a hard time functioning years ago. So think about what is your weakness and how you are overcoming it. Like mine, if it's a hard conversation, in that season, I was having those conversations first thing in the morning when I was most alert for me. And then I would not have any meetings scheduled and I take some time, a step away and work through things. And then I would be able to work, come back to work. So I want you to come up with that. I'm going to answer that, Lou, in just a minute. I see your question. I'll answer that in just a second. So think through what is your strength and what is your weakness. And make sure you're ready to respond to those. Again, the DISC or another behavioral assessment can help you. And then this is the big one. Why should we hire you? Or sometimes they ask, why do you want this job? And so you want to know, this is your chance to say, to kind of like, just put the exclamation mark on it of why we should hire you. You have heard all the questions, you've heard about the job. This is when you explain to them, well, based on what I've heard today, these are the things I can bring to the company. This is not because I'm great. No, this is what I can do for you. This is why I'm a match here. This is not something where you say, well, I like that the job is remote and I like the hours. Like that is about you. Again, think like the hiring manager. Why should we hire you? Well, based on what you guys have told me today about the job and what the research I've done, I can help you take the next step in this project. I know how to implement it. I'm not going to need a lot of training. And I'm excited about the career pathways here and what you do to serve the community. I mean, you explain why they should hire you. And then here's a great question, you guys. I'm going to give you a list of questions you can ask, but I love this one. After, you answer this question, you can say, is there anything stopping you from moving me forward in the process? I love this question so much. I think you should ask this at every interview. I love this question so much because it's the moment that they get to respond to you if there really is something. And then you get a chance to kind of rebuttal. You don't want to come across that way, but kind of say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I didn't even tell you guys about this that I did. And you get to kind of respond to their concern. Whenever somebody asks me this question and I answer them, almost every single time, their response, I'm like, huh, okay, that did not come across in your interview. I did not know that about you. And like, we do end up moving forward with them in some way. They may not go to the very, very end. Maybe they do. But like, always ask, is there anything at the end of the interview? Is there anything you guys heard today that's like, is there anything stopping you from moving me forward in the process? It's a great question. So make sure you have that one written down and you ask it at every interview. Okay, so again, I mentioned behavioral interview questions and all the prep work we did today, that is trying to answer, or that is to answer behavioral interview questions. It's legally defensible. It's the most fair. It can be used in one-on-ones. It can be used in panels. It can be used in groups. It can be used in informal or formal. And here is the thing that I want you to get today. Behavioral interviews help the company understand you, that your past performance, the accomplishments you've had in the past, the work you've done in the past, your past performance is an indicator of your future success or failure. So if you can say, I was at this company and I did this, they're going, oh, then they can do it here. Okay, well, I can see that. But if somebody says, can you tell me about an example of a time you did this? And you're like, oh, I'm really, I'm good at that. That's a strength I have. Here's maybe how I would deal with that. I would go talk to them and we would implement the project. There's no picture. There's nothing that shows them how you got from here to the success. Give the example. Walk through the story that you created. The golden moments or the star that you wrote out, because past performance is an indicator of future success. If you spell it out, they can see it. You spell it out from past companies, they can see you doing it at their company. Maybe you implemented a huge marketing blitz, and as part of that marketing blitz, you did social media, you did email campaigns, you did search engine optimization through Google Ads. You did all this stuff. And they're like, oh my gosh, we have a campaign that needs to go out, and that would be part of that person's job. And we already know how they would do that. They told us. They did it over here. It was wildly successful. They can do it over here. We did an event. We've done a lot in the last couple months where we're not running career fairs, but we are doing all the outreach and marketing for career fairs. And we're partnering with different government entities that host career fairs. But the problem that the government entities are having are reaching out, doing the connections, doing the marketing, finding the people that need the jobs to go to this career fair. So they're really good at the logistics and the employers and getting the employers there, but they've been struggling to get people to show up to these events. So what we do really well is targeting the people in that area that are a fit for these events, and we market to them. And the last couple events, we have had over 300 people attend these career fairs we're doing. The last two were in Pinal County, one in Coolidge, Arizona, one in Eloy, Arizona. And if you know anything about Arizona, those are in the boonies. There's not a lot of people in that area. We got over 300 people to show up for these companies that had a lot of jobs. And that might not seem like a big deal, but I am telling you, it is hard to do. People don't always show up to these kind of events. If I can do that in Eloy, Arizona, if our organization can do that in Eloy, Arizona, we can do it wherever this company and client is asking us to do it. That's how it works. You tell them what you did, you give the example, you walk them through it, and they're like, oh, you can do that marketing campaign here and get people to show up to our event. That's why you use behavioral answers, because people can see it. Paint the story. So here are just some additional questions, example questions. Tell me about a time when you prevented unfair or inappropriate behavior by your peers. Like, was there something? All of us have had a time when something weird, something was off. And you can look down at your questions and be like, oh, this one was kind of weird. For example, I was in Israel doing an implementation, and actually, let me use India. I was in India doing an HR audit, so that would have been one of my things. And in India, culture is very different than the United States. And in India, what they're allowed to do from like a medical and insurance coverage perspective is very different than what's legal in the United States. So in India, if one person, at least this is how it was when I was over there doing my audit, if one person in the family, let's say the husband is working for a corporation and he has medical insurance, essentially everyone in his family is now covered under the medical insurance, including grandma, kids, aunts, uncles, anyone that might be living in that home. So what was happening is they were going to the pharmacy without a prescription and getting these medical drugs, and it was being covered under insurance. The Americans come over and they're like, what are you doing? That's illegal. And when we were done, so that would have been like my example of like, what is happening? Well, as we dug in further and further, we realized this is culturally acceptable. And so we tried to understand, we did more research, we documented, and we ended up being like, after we got through it, I won't go into all the details of how it was legal and all that stuff, but we were like, oh, okay, it's actually okay. This is okay. We're not gonna, audit and fire all these people. This is like a thing that has happened. Now, for the company, they may need to change some processes with, their company in that culture. But that was like a time when something unfair was happening or something seemingly inappropriate was happening. And I could use that example from this. And what actually ended up turning out is we had to alter some of the ways that the prescriptions were being purchased, but also we had to adjust some of our processes. So the point being, all of your 10 stories, they will probably answer your behavioral questions in some way. But by using the actual example to answer, it gives the company the reality of, oh, they can do it there, they can do it here. They can have success. You can actually write into ChatGPT things like, give me a list of 10 possible behavioral questions for this job description. And you can put the job description right into ChatGPT. That way you can actually practice what I'm explaining to you right now. All right, so we did this. We talked about the STAR, and we talked about the PAR, and we talked about golden moments. Remember, 10 of these. You should have at least 2 already essentially kind of drafted out. And then I want to talk about at the interview, but I had another question in the chat about, okay, great question, Lou, about a company asking, and oftentimes it happens at the end on why we should hire you. They want to know why you left the last company. And they'll be like, hey, are you still there? Or why'd you leave? Or why are you leaving? And for Lou, he's asking if he left a company because of a toxic environment. That's legitimate. People leave for that reason, obviously. In fact, most people leave companies. The majority will leave companies if it's on their own because of a leader and because of their manager. That's the main reason people leave companies. And so often it can be because of that type of environment. You can use something like, hey, I I left that company. The culture just wasn't a great match for me. I thought it was. The first couple of years were great, but things started changing. And I just felt like I wasn't aligned with what they were doing and the direction they were headed. Period. Do not explain more. Do not go into more detail. That's it. The company is evaluating you in that point to see exactly what you said, Lou. Are you going to trash talk us when you're not happy with something we do? That's one of the reasons. I mean, there are a lot of reasons they want to know why you left a company or why you're leaving a company, but that is one of them. So never, ever, ever speak negative about a company. You get a lot more respect if you can tell the truth and also honor the company. I worked at Intel for 10 years. I loved my job there. I walked in when I was 24 years old, no joke. Walked in first day and I said, I'm going to retire here. Like, I was so excited to be there. Well, 10 years later, Intel decided I was not going to stay there and our whole group was let go. I loved the work I did. I loved the opportunities. They paid for my education, my master's degree. I got to travel the world. I learned so much there. Were there times that it was like, look, yeah, you'll never hear me talk about that because I was so grateful for all the opportunities that I got while I was there, all the work I got to do, all the people I met. So no matter what, I want you to think about the good stuff of that company. You could obviously a layoff, that's an easy answer. Our whole group was let go. And so that's why I'm job searching, or that's why I'm looking for a new job. But always, you know, in the best way possible, keep it on the up and up. Keep it positive. So thanks for that, Lou. Thanks for that question. Again, you just can kind of say, you know, culturally things changed. And it was different. And so I just wasn't a match for the company anymore, or they were changing my role and it wasn't going to be a fit for, you know, where I was going in the future. That's why I'm so excited about this opportunity. All right. Okay. What do I bring to the interview? Dress to impress. And when I say that, I am talking about you're not going to walk in a three-piece suit. Well, maybe you are. Maybe that's the culture of the company. But when I say dress to impress, what I would encourage you to do is figure out kind of like what's a daily dress look like there? What do they wear? Do they wear jeans? Are they business casual? Do they dress up? Are they in dresses and suits? Like, what does it look like to work there? You can look at their social media. You can look at their website. Lots of different ways to figure that out. And then dress one step up. So if they're in jeans, wear khakis. If they're in khakis, then wear nice dress pants with a button-up shirt. You don't want to be so far off that when you walk in for that interview, they're like, oh man, culturally, this person is not going to fit. Because if they're all in jeans and you come in a suit and tie, they're just like, oh, he's not going to relate to us. So try to dress, you know, a step above. And then you're always going to bring in some copies of your resume. If you did a cover letter, and one of the questions I saw on here was about cover letters. Cover letters are usually optional. And most recruiters will tell you they don't read them. However, if you have something to say and you want to include a cover letter, do. And the cover letter should be kind of your pitch on why you want to make an impact and work at that company. So it can be a quick review of your skills, but really it's the why do you want to be there? What's that thing? That's what a cover letter is for. Sometimes the cover letter, essentially, if you're sending an email resume and email, the cover letter is like your email message. On an applicant tracking system, when you're submitting your resume, There is a lot of times an option to upload a cover letter. Absolutely, you can do that. But that's your kind of pitch. What you saw or what the job, and giving an overview of your skills that match the job, and then why you want to work there. It's not always required. You can use AI to develop it, but you need to edit it as well, and it not be just AI. You need to make it personal. Okay, so you have the resume, the cover letter. You want to bring references in case they ask you. Bring those, at least have them ready. They can be on your phone. They don't need to be, you don't have to print them out, but make sure they're ready to go in case they ask you. So you can be like, oh yeah, here you go. And have those references ready to go. And then as soon as you send those references off, you are calling the people that you sent your references to, or you're calling those references and you're saying, hey, thanks, you had offered to be a reference for me. I just sent your information off to this company about this job. And by the way, here's what, something I'd love for you to talk about. So if you give your references guidance, yesterday I got an email message about a previous employee, and she said, Jessica, would you be my reference from a supervisor standpoint? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And she told me the job. Actually, it's ASU. She's applying for a project coordinator, and she wanted me to talk about her ability to manage different events and stuff. And I was like, absolutely, you're good at that. I'd be happy to do that. So I am prepped. And if I don't feel like I get a call out of the blue, so just let your references know that, hey, I gave your name to them. Bring your interview notes. Those are your 10 examples, and bring something to write on. So that notepad that somebody was talking about earlier, bring that notepad. You can absolutely take notes. And here's a tip. When they're asking you an interview question, you know what I do? I actually write the interview question down, or at least the key thing that I need to close with. Because sometimes we'll be giving an answer. Have you ever done this where you're giving an answer and then you're like, oh my gosh, what did they ask me? I got to finish strong, but I don't remember what the question was. I'm telling this great story. I'm telling my experience, but what was it? And so if you write a couple of the words down on your notepad, then you can make sure you look at that too, so you land the plane and so that you answer their questions. And then I always encourage people to turn off their phone. Like, not just silence your phone, because if you have kids, especially if you have kids and you see your phone light up while you're sitting there, you're like, your mind immediately is like, okay, they knew I was in an interview and they knew they could only reach out if it was important, but like, how important is it? Right? Because my kids will be like, Mom, she's being mean to me. Right? Like, so turn it off, or leave it in the car. Don't have it around you. Do not allow it to distract you. And then at the interview, during the interview, it is important that you understand that first impressions matter. And that you smile and shake their hand. First impressions matter. And every single person you engage with, first impressions matter. Arrive a few minutes early, not a half hour early. That's awkward. A couple minutes early. If it's a Zoom call, get on early to test it, to test the technology. For every single event we do, we're on about a half hour early to test the technology. Get onto a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams. How often especially if you're not on it a lot, often you'll load the program up and it'll be like, update happened. You need to reinstall. So like, do that ahead of time. Get on there early, make sure it's all working. And then in the interview, you are engaging with every single person. Every single person. You're shaking their hands, you're saying hi, as you're answering questions, you're kind of, bouncing around a little bit, answering everybody. And then when you're answering questions, facts are our friends. Examples from the past are indicators of future success. Use examples. This language I want you to take out of your vocabulary when you're answering questions. Let's say I ask you, Tell me about a time when you had to, let's go back to the hard conversation because that's easy. Tell me about a time when you had to have a hard conversation with somebody and you're like, you know, I really get along with everybody. I don't really have to have hard conversations. And I'm like, okay, I ask you again. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be like a knockdown, drag out fight, just like, an uncomfortable conversation. Just talk to me. I just want to see how you handle hard things. And people say this all the time when you're interviewing. Well, here's how I would do that. Or this is what I would do. They try to come up with some crazy, like, oh, okay, so if I had to have a conversation, what I would do is, or how I would respond is, they would say something like, I would sit down, have a one-on-one conversation, and whatever. They'll give a high level. And so then I say, tell me about a time you did that. When did you have a one-on-one conversation with somebody? Walk me through that. And then they're like, I can't, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't really have hard conversations. Like, that is not good. You must give an example because all of us have conversations at times we don't love. It doesn't mean it was you're yelling at somebody. It just means, I don't want to have this conversation. So don't ever say what I would do is, like, take that out. Even if their question is, what would you do if you were working on a project and the technology went out? What would you do? You can say, look down at my stories and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember the tech issue we had here. Oh, so, I can actually give you an example. We had a technology go out during an event. And what I did was worked with my team, tried these switchers, did this, and we were able to bring it back up, our third backup, get through that part of the presentation. And then when there was a break, our team went to work and were able to reconfigure everything. Like, again, past experience, past success is an indicator of future success. So instead of what would I do pie in the sky, the company's like, oh, that's actually what he did. That's actually what he did. And that's what he would do over here. We can see it. I hope that you're understanding over and over. I'm drilling this into our heads, like, give the example. So when you're at the interview, the first impression matters. We can all smile for 5 seconds. All of us. We can smile, we can say hi, we can look you in the eyes, we can give a handshake. All of us can do that. Be likable. People want to work. And I know some of us go into interviews so nervous. Like, but when you are prepared, the interview is you answering questions about yourself. And you have prepared by coming up with 10 answers about yourself that no one else is going to know if you don't get it exactly right. What if I'm telling this story about the girl that I really had a hard time with? I remember her name is Jill, but what if I called her Susan? Nobody would know. Like, it's okay if you don't get the tiniest details right. You know you more than anyone. So before you walk into that interview, take a deep breath and it's going to be okay. Just be you. Just be yourself, especially if you've prepared, you're good. Now, this last one I think is really interesting and important. Mirror their response, initial response. And what I mean by that is, if you walk into an interview and they start doing the small talk thing, like, how was your drive here? How long did it take you to get here? How's the weather? That kind of small talk stuff I talked about earlier that I'm really awkward with. But they're doing that. then please engage with it and please talk to them and have a conversation. You can say, oh, actually, what, I carpooled here. I brought my friend with me so we could carpool because I wanted, I knew traffic would be bad. And so I just wanted to make sure I got here in plenty of time. Or, hey, traffic wasn't that bad. Or I left early to make sure. So like engage with the conversation. And you could say, what part of town are you from? How long does it normally take you to get into the office? So have the conversation. If they do not go into small talk or asking you any questions like that, and they're like, hey, thanks for being here. I want to talk to you. We're interviewing you today about this job. And we're going to go ahead and get into it. And then they just start asking questions like, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. Can you walk through your experience? Go in. Don't step back and try to do small talk. Because sometimes when that's happening, they have a lot of interviews they're trying to get through. And so go right in. Go right in. Again, that's part of making that chemistry, that likability factor go up. You want to mirror the way that they are interviewing you. So here are some questions that you can ask. And just to totally lay it out there, I do not love at the interview you having 5 questions written down and you ask those 5 questions. I just don't love that because it seems more like, okay, now I'm going to interview you. It's not natural. And so when they say something like, hey, why should we hire you? Or, why do you want to work here? Whatever. When they ask you that question and you answer it, then you can ask, I would love to hear from you guys if there's anything stopping you from moving me forward in this process, because then it becomes more like a conversation. And then any other questions you have for them should be questions that are related to the job and to the company, because it shows that you've done your research. Things like, hey, I was on your website yesterday and I noticed that you guys just put up a new product line. I would love to hear a little bit about that if you don't mind. Hey, I saw out on your Instagram page 2 days ago, you guys were at this event in the community. Is that like, do you guys all serve the same nonprofits or do you do different things? Like, make it relatable to the job and to the company. If you don't have any questions or you can't think of any, you can use one of these to kind of close out. But don't ask 5 questions. It looks very scripted. Ask a question or 2 and something that you're actually really interested in. So those are questions to ask, and then questions not to ask, especially in that first interview or the second one. Don't ask about salary and benefits. And I know you need to know, and I really wish every job description had the salary range listed. I'm hopeful that someday that will be the federal law, but it's not right now. And so the reason I don't want to ask you, because I don't want to waste your time. I do not want you wasting your time. So when you're applying for jobs, part of the research process is figuring out what a typical salary is for that position at that company. That is a great question to ask ChatGPT, by the way. That you can go to Glassdoor. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can look at that. But I don't want you asking about salary and benefits in that first interview or even second when you're meeting with the hiring manager. Because even though we all need to make money and we need to make good salary, we need to pay our bills. Like, that's a given. That's why we work, is to be able to support ourselves and our family. But when you ask about it in the interview at the beginning, especially the beginning, it looks like you're only there for that reason. And that's what you care about. And you should not be interviewing with companies because you only care about money. You will hate your job. You want to work for a company that you actually want to work for because you care what they do. You know you have the skills to support them. So keep those for later. Because there will be a time that you really do need to ask that if they haven't disclosed it yet. but see what, if they do disclose it in the first 1 or 2 interviews. Don't ask it. Now, somebody asks, the question I always get is, how do we respond to that? What is the salary you need? Well, that is when your research comes into handy. When you can take a look at what they typically pay for that position. And you can say what you've made at your old role, if that's the salary you want to make. But if you want to make more, then you can say, well, based on, just some quick research I did, it seems like you guys pay typically a range of, 75 to 95 for this position. I would probably be in the middle range of that or a little bit higher based on my experience. Like, you can answer it like that. But it also shows that you've done some research. Don't ask about a negative business environment right now. That you can find out through research or through your network or through somebody who knows somebody that works there. Or even in the final interviews when they're like, okay, we would love to offer you this job. Do you have any concerns? And then you can have those kind of conversations. And don't ask, tell me about this job. What is it again? Because then they're like, oh, you don't even really want to work here. You don't even know what you applied for. And it happens. It happens quite often. Like, oh, why are you calling me? What job is this about? Because so many people just apply, and hope something sticks. So that's not how we're applying for jobs anymore. And lastly, when you go in confident, go in being curious about the company even more. And remember, you know you better than anybody else. So if you don't get every detail exactly right, it's okay. It's okay. Because you have your stories down and you know the examples you have. And you know that you fit at least 80% of the job or more, or you wouldn't have applied. So when you do the steps that we tell you to do, apply for 1 or 2 jobs a day, update your resume, only apply for companies you really want to work for, do the research, connect with people that work there, and prepare for interviews. You do those things, you're going to get a job you want faster than just apply. You're going to get a better job and you're going to get it faster. Do the things we are telling you to do because we know it works. I'm going to jump over to the chat real quick. I have just a couple more slides that I want to go through, but okay, Gabriel, great question. Gabriel asked, if it's a panel interview and there's somebody in there that have interviewed with you before, can you repeat stories? Yeah. Yes, it's no problem. You can repeat stories, especially if it's some additional new people. And it happens a lot because you may interview with somebody and they're like, oh, I have a great candidate I want you guys to meet and I'm going to sit in on the interview. That will happen. And that's okay. So absolutely, you can do that. Oh, the direction they are going. Okay, Lou, I see that. Okay, so a couple more things. After your interview, be sure to follow up. And one of the best ways that we can do this is through LinkedIn. So if you connected with them before you went into the interview, like the day before, the day you found out you were interviewing, if you connected with them, then you can follow up with them after. And you can say, actually, you can put this into ChatGPT and say, hey, I interviewed with this person. I'd like to reiterate my interest, and I would like to just kind of put an exclamation point on my experience and excitement for working there. Can you write a follow-up LinkedIn message? And ChatGPT will help you come up with something. But basically what you can do is just go into LinkedIn, send them a direct message, and say something like, thank you for the interview today. I am excited about IBM and bringing my experience to this role. I know I can make an immediate impact on this project, and I look forward to talking to you soon. And why I love LinkedIn instead of just an email or snail mail. Why I love LinkedIn is because when they get your message, they may have interviewed 100, not 100, but let's say they interviewed 10 people for this job. When you send the LinkedIn email or direct message, then they get immediate access to your profile. Like they can click on, and they're like, who is this person again? And they can click on you and see, and we're like, oh, that's right, they worked at that company. Like it's another reminder before they walk into their, roll up meeting. And so I love LinkedIn. Email is absolutely appropriate. You can do both because sometimes not everyone checks their LinkedIn. But recruiters, usually if it's a recruiter, they're going to. But definitely email is okay. Personally, I would recommend both LinkedIn and then follow up with an email within 24 hours, like right away. I would do it. And then just think after you leave the interview, what went well? What did I mess up on something? Did I get stumped? Did I not have an answer? Did you feel prepared? And were you confident? And did you build rapport? Like, did you engage with everybody? That is a great way to just kind of step back and really analyze. How can I fix it or do better next time? So that's what we talked through today, is the full interview life cycle, how to prepare, how to get excited about every kind of company that reaches out to you for an interview, what it looks like at the interview and after. Great question in the chat right now around follow up. I usually tell people that when do I follow up? Follow up immediately, as a thank you. And another great question at the interview. So you know how I said a great question is, hey, is there anything that would stop you from moving forward? And usually, not always, but usually a company will tell you next steps. They will say, hey, you should hear back from us within the week, or the next step is this manager or this person, or you might be hearing from HR, whatever the next step is. If they don't tell you, then that is an absolutely appropriate question and a good question at the end of the interview. You can say, okay, so, hey, can you tell me what do the next steps look like? Should I be hearing back from somebody? What's your process look like? Ask that question, because then, if they say, you know what, we're going through a whole bunch of interviews right now, we'll be wrapping up on Friday, and you should hear something by Monday. Then the next week comes, you didn't hear anything on Monday. On Tuesday, you're sending them a note, or you're calling them, or whatever information you have. You're saying, hey, I know you guys, we're pushing through your interviews to finish up on Friday. I think you guys said you were going to meet on Monday. I would love to know kind of the status on my candidacy for this job. So find out from them their timeline and then respond accordingly. And then I usually allow another week. If you don't hear anything, I usually allow another week, and then I'll check back again if you don't hear anything. So, okay. So those are okay. Now what I want you to do is take a look at either your written notes or kind of the notes you took in your head, based on the things we talked about today. And I would love for you to put in the chat one thing you can do over the next week, because it's already Wednesday. So over the next week, by next Wednesday, what is one thing you can do to take a huge step in nailing your next interview? Write it in the chat and let's see what you got. Of course, it could be writing your 10 stories. Maybe it's coming up with those couple questions you need to ask. Maybe it's doing some research on a company that you maybe have coming up. Is it taking some assessments? What is one thing you can do in the next week to prepare yourself? Maybe it's figuring out what your strength is. Maybe it's, updating your LinkedIn so you have a more robust LinkedIn network so you can connect to companies better. Great. Good. Okay. Oh, I love that. Role playing, coming up with responses, your 10 stories. Perfect. Looking at some behavioral interview questions. Great. You guys, really good. That is exactly what I want you to commit to. One thing you can do in the next week to be prepared and ready to have a great interview. Okay, if you are in Pinal County, this program has been sponsored. That just sounded like a commercial. This program has been sponsored by, but Arizona at Work Pinal County has been funding this program through a grant. And if you are in Pinal County, here is a whole bunch of information. You can reach out to them. They can offer additional assistance. We were doing these originally in person, but if you know anything about Arizona, Pinal County is a humongous county, very spread out here. And so getting people to be in person was difficult. So we went online and virtual, and then they allowed us to open up the virtual sessions to everybody. 3,900 square miles. It's a big county. And so we were able to open it up and offer these opportunities. We are working through the organization called Career Connectors, and we're all about helping you connect to jobs and resources and employers by empowering you. So giving you the information and guidance and hope to lift you up and connect to the right place. We do have one program left under this grant. I think we've run about 50 workshops. And this is tomorrow is the last one, and it's a big one. We did salary negotiation under this grant. We've only been able to do it twice. And so this is the second salary negotiation class, but it's also the last workshop we have under this one. So Brenda Mariah is excellent at walking you through how to negotiate a salary, how to look at total compensation, how to know your value. And so that is a great one. You can register on the website, same place you registered before, or you're going to get an email today and you can use that link and to register. Here are a couple upcoming events we have. Our next virtual big event, these are our monthly events, is on June 12th at 9 a.m. And we're going to talk about branding. And then we're also going to talk about how to get through the career transition life cycle of, anger, grief, and how to get through there quickly so you can, be focused. And then we have a couple other ones coming. We do one of these big ones every month. The Carol, to answer your question in the chat, we do not send the presentation out. It's a really large file, and also it has intellectual property built in. However, we are going to send you an email later today that will have a link back to the recorded webinar. So you can fast forward and you can go back and, you can utilize any of the content that you would like. This is my contact information. And so if you want to scan that QR code or go to the website, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. And I do a lot of my responses in LinkedIn. And so feel free to connect with me there. And I just want to say thank you all today for being here and for engaging. And we are just hopeful that you find the right career. And if you can get your 10 stories together, I would love it if you send me a note in LinkedIn and give me the 10 stories. You don't got to write them out, but give me your 10 points. And sometimes I shout people out on LinkedIn where my network is, the network that I have, LinkedIn is the place I go. So I have a pretty large network of recruiters. And so if you send me your 10 stories, I'll be picking a couple people to shout out over the next week or so. So do that, gives you a little extra incentive to get that done. But thanks everyone. Thanks for being here. We so appreciate all of you.